Okay, so let's just wait for everyone to join in before we start, and welcome everyone. Hi Ruchi. So yeah, we're good to go as soon as everyone joins in. Yeah, I'll do that. Oh, okay, sure. I'll do that. Okay, I see. Cool, Anrit's here. Hi, Kiran. Okay. Hi, Dad. So yeah, as I said, we just waiting for a few more people to join in, and then we shall begin. But it's nice to see people already coming in. Okay, that's wow. Today surprisingly not very hot. That was good. Hello. Hmm. Great. I can see the comments coming in. Am I clear? Am I loud and clear? Just let me know if my voice is coming clear. So Arrow. Okay, great. So at least we don't have an audio problem. Hello, Swati. Yeah. Great. I hope you guys are having a good weekend. And yeah, I think we're all looking forward for the lockdown to get over, but we're not sure when it's going to happen. So we are in a weird time where we want the time to pass quickly, or for us to move quickly into the future. So I guess this talk is going to be very interesting from that perspective. Great. Let's just wait for another minute or two, and we shall begin then. Good afternoon. Yeah. Hi, Chitra. Wow, so good to see a lot of people coming in. And yeah. Thanks, Ruchi. Yeah. I wish I could be grooming more, but due to the lack of not being able to go out and not having the kit, so I was not able to do it. But yeah. Cool. I think we should begin now. I think there is enough people, and that's okay. If people join in, we can quickly summarize. Sorry, are you feeling like am I not loud enough? Okay. Well, that's the first time. I mean, I've been told I'm very loud generally, so yeah. Okay, so I guess this should be good, right? This kind of a volume. Yeah, when we get into the stories, I will definitely modulate my voice, so don't worry about that. Okay, great. I think we can begin, right? Ruchi, are we good to go? Okay, cool. We'll wait for a minute. Oh, hi, Vicky. That's good to know you're here too. Uh, I just realized I love this feature of Facebook where, like, when people are sending all their likes and all, it comes like champagne bubbles on the side. And it makes you feel good. Yeah. Oh, great, Chaitra. Uh, yeah. Cool. So, I want to begin with the concept of time itself. Before we get into the stories and all, I want to talk about the time itself, and yeah, let's just begin with this. So, time, it's a very weird concept. I mean, the more you try to describe it, the harder it becomes, right? And it's something that we definitely feel. We feel the passage of time, but to be honest, we are also just going through the moments of time. So, I mean, as the creatures we are as humans, time is something that is only cognitively understood. It's very hard to talk about time in a very emotional way because generally, like, we feel only a particular moment. So, if you think about that, the concept of time travel, right, which is mind boggling by itself, and it speaks about human imagination, right? But let's define the term time travel. Okay, what does time travel itself mean? So, time travel is the concept of the movement between certain points in time. So, if a time is uh, a linear a thing that is going through different moments, time travel is going from one moment to another moment, right? And the idea that we can travel back in time is something of a theoretical impossibility, because given the laws of physics and all, going back in time is not scientifically possible. Yes, I mean, we can imagine it, but at least scientifically we've not found any ways to explain how it happens. Going forward in time is something that still is possible because given gravity affects time. In science, there's a law that gravity does affect time. Certain things can move faster in the course of time than the other things, so technically something is traveling in time. So if that is given, right, then basically time traveling is in a way possible. So what's interesting is the science fiction has gone into a lot of description about different modes of time traveling. I mean, you have, I mean, you must have seen in like the Harry Potter mode of time traveling, where a person goes back in time and creates the same thing, versus the movies like Avengers. The time traveling has alternate realities being created. So science has come to a point where science fiction has come to a point where time traveling has different theories and different ways, different rules happening. Okay, but what's interesting is that the concept of moving through the time itself, at least time flowing faster, can also be seen in our mythologies. I mean, this is something that's been traced in various mythologies. And what's interesting about each of these mythologies is that they're not just they don't get caught into the technicalities of the science, the time travel description itself. They talk about the emotional impact of it. And I think that's what's interesting, right? I mean, the idea, the fascination we have as humans of wanting to time travel is based on this idea that what if we can move away from the current reality we are in, right? So today we shall be discussing mythologies with time travel, ancient stories predating science fiction. And this is another session of Mathematical. I hope you guys who have been part of the previous session, they enjoyed it. I was happy to see a lot of feedback, comments, and all. So yeah, we decided to do one more. So today we are going to get into the time travel mythologies, and I am your time twisted mathematician Anupriya, and I'll be telling you at least 3 stories where we will be discussing how time itself or the time travel has been talked about in the ancient stories itself. Okay, so cool. Should we go into the first story? Okay, I think I'll just remove my glasses. Yeah, cool. So I'll go into the first story. Now the first story, okay, itself comes from the Irish mythology, and this is a tragic love story which has a concept of time. Great to see a lot of more people joining in. Just a quick recap: we're talking about mythologies which involve time travel. So we're getting into the first story itself. The first story is the story of Niam and Oisin. I know the names can be a little tough, so I'm going to show you guys the names. But in case there's a question, you can ask me. So this is the story of Niam and Oisin. Okay, I'll get to the other aspects of it, but the idea of the story, this tragic story, goes back before Christianity, and it comes from a particular. It comes from a particular Irish literature called the Itrachi, which is this mythologies that deal with the hero going outside into another world or with another worldly being and then coming back. Sorry, were you saying that is this not visible? Should I put it like this? Like this? Is this better? Yeah, is this better? Okay, perfect. Yeah, this is something I keep making a mistake. I keep feeling like it's supposed to be the way I'm seeing it, but I guess it's mirror image for you all. Okay, so as I said, this story is about Niam and Oisin. Okay, and so this story, as I said, comes from the Irish mythology, from this particular thing called the Itrachi, which is the Irish stories that involve a hero venturing out into another world and all. What's important to know is the characters in these stories, they appear in multiple other stories. So many of the elements, many of the features or motivations may be coming from another mythology, another story, like our Hindu mythologies. The stories of Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma, like they don't have only one story, right? So, but we're going to talk about a particular story where Oisin and Niam meet and what happens to them. So, just to start, many years ago, in a place called Era, which is the Irish word for Ireland, there lived a great and noble warrior named Oisin. Now, Oisin was basically a legendary warrior, but his father, Fiann McCumhail, he was the leader of the Fiannas. Okay, the Fiannas were basically the warriors who protected the land, the land that they governed and all in the island sort of thing. So one day when the Fiannas were hunting a deer, suddenly they see a beautiful woman riding on a snow white horse coming in towards them. And there was something very enigmatic about her. She had this beautiful glow, golden hair that was all the way to her waist. She wore this pale blue gown that was just flowing, and people were just mesmerized. And as she comes closer, she says that I am Niam of the golden hair. My father is King Manannan, and I come from the land of Tirnanog. And this horse is Embar, the horse that she was riding in. I'm looking for a noble warrior named Oisin. I must meet him immediately and take him back to Tirnanog. Now the Fiannas are a little confused, a random beautiful woman coming in and asking for this. So they're just dazed, and that's when Osin steps in, and he says, um, "Dear lassie, it's you. It's the one you are asking for is me. But may I know what exactly, who's, how do you know about me?" So Niam tells him that there was a prophecy that her head is soon going to turn into a pig's head. Now that's a different story altogether, but just for the purpose of this, she says that there is her head is going to turn into a pig's head, and the only way to stop it is by the union of this person called Osin of the Fiannas, and she must find him. Now Osin is so mesmerized by her that he doesn't even see the absurdity of the request. He's just in awe of her, and he seems to be falling in love with her. So he agrees. He's like, "Yeah, I will come with you." And soon enough, he just jumps on the horse with her. A quick goodbye to his father Fionn and the Fiannas, and they ride off. And as they're riding, they cross many mountains, many valleys. They go over the sea, and they finally come to this magical place that comes in the view. And there's something very ethereal about this place as Osin is coming, and Osin finally reaches this he reaches the kingdom, and he's given a grand welcome by the king and the queen, who who take him. They have a big feast, and Osin ends up staying for a couple of days there. And soon enough, like, he goes around every day. Niam takes him to a different place, and what she tells him is that this is a place where no one gets sick, no one is there's no hunger, there's no war. It's always peaceful, calm, and there's plentiful for everyone. So Niam, when she tells this to Osin ends up, like, enjoying this place. He and Niam are falling in love. They even get married. They have they have kids also. Osin keeps going for hunts in this place, and as he keeps going for hunts, he comes back at night, and in the arms of Niam, he keeps telling her the stories of his stories of his father, the thing Fionn, and the Fiannas, the great stories that he could think of. And soon enough, what seems like 3 years have passed. Now Osin starts getting a little homesick. I mean, it is all good and well. I mean, he was enjoying this place. He was in a place with with the woman he loved, his wife, Niam. But now he started missing his home. He started missing the Fiannas. He started missing the lush green forests of Ireland. He was missing his father, Fionn. And this is something Niam notices. Niam notices that she that her husband Osin is not is not enjoying. He's always in his own mind. And finally, Osin gets the courage to ask her that if he could just return back for a quick visit. Now Niam is not very this thing. She does not agree with this. She says that she's against this. But Osin, tries to convince her, and seeing Osin's sad face and his demeanor, Niam tells him that okay, you can go. She gives him her horse, Embar, the snow white horse that she rode in. But she gives him with a warning, saying that do not step down from the horse and step on the soil of Ireland, for then you shall not be able to return to Tir na Nog. Okay. Now Osin is just eager to get back to his home, so he doesn't really question why, and he quickly gets on to the horse and he rides off. And then again, riding through the same journey that he had taken before, trying to remember the way he had come, going across the mountains, going across the lakes, rivers, and then finally the sea itself. He comes back to Ireland, but this is not the Ireland he remembered. There's something very different. The grand castle that used to be his household, that used to be his family, a place where his family used to stay, was completely broken down, tethered down with cobwebs, and had ivory growing around it. The forests were itself gone, with a lot of buildings and other roads that had come in, and there was no sign of the Fiannas, the warriors that he used to go out on hunts for. No sign of his father. Very confused, he keeps riding on, and ultimately he comes to this valley where he sees a bunch of men trying to lift a boulder and move it. Now, Osin, being a very generous and just a very eager person to help out, decides to help them out, and he's still a very strong and a mighty warrior. So he decides to help them out. So he leans forward from his saddle and just tries to reach the boulder so that he could help out. But the saddle suddenly breaks and he falls onto the ground. And what happens next is there's a loud shriek by the men, because in place of Osin is this withering old man coming, becoming older and older, to the point that his beard is becoming whiter, his body is becoming frail, and he just ends up completely becoming an old person. It was almost as if the centuries of age had suddenly caught on to him. And at that moment, Ember, the horse, suddenly neighs and runs off far away before Osin could even catch it. Osin for a second was not able to understand what happened, but then when he asks he asked the other men that have they seen the Fianna and his father Fionn, the old men, the men around look at each other and say that the only time they've heard of this name is through the legends that was almost 300 years old. They hadn't heard of this for a long time. I mean, these are the stuff of legends. And that's when Osin realizes that he's come to a time where his father, his band of warriors and everyone has passed. And heartbroken and exhausted, he falls down, and in his dying breath he ends up talking about the stories of the Fianna and his father, and of this magical place called Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth, where till today Niam waits for her doomed lover to return. So yeah, that was the first story. You guys have any questions about the story? We'll be getting to some of the commonalities and the analysis of the stories at the end, but let us know if you had any questions about this. What's interesting is that what I told you is one of the retellings. The story actually has been passed on as a folklore. It comes in songs. Osin himself, as while he's a warrior, he's actually a bard. He's a poet. And many of the stories that are coming from the Irish myths are written by him. So this is a story. This is probably his last story, if you think about it. Niam goes to have her own story, and Tir na Nog as a place. Tir na Nog itself means the land of eternal youth. And I think there are different stories. There are stories where Niam had actually warned him that you're going back and the time is not going to be in the same place. But what's interesting is there are tellings where Osin did not know about this, and what ends up happening is the time catches up to him. So yeah, that was the first story of Niam and Osin from Irish mythologies, where you see someone literally, time stopping and then traveling through time and then time catching up. A very haunting tale, especially if you hear the songs and the different, the Irish versions of it, because the stories describe their love, the way they wait for each other, and Osin, especially when he comes back, he tries to convince a lot of people that he comes from this land. He has seen this land and no one believes him. So there is a lot of, a aftermath of the story too. But basically he dies, and never getting to meet Osin, never getting to meet Niam again. Yeah, so what's interesting is Niam, she is a fairy. In Irish mythology, she is from another world, so she is a fairy. And, ultimately she does this thing. So once again, just you're right, this thing, Chitra, she is from different universes, and this is a story of a star-crossed love ultimately coming and Niam kind of knew about the fact that if Osin goes back, she will never meet him. There's a good chance she will never meet him, and Osin makes a mistake. In different retellings, sometimes in the tellings he accidentally falls from the horse, and another tellings he actually steps down to eagerly help, and then it happens. So it depends on which one you're going to believe in. And you're right, that like this is a future travel. In fact, if you think about it, many of the stories involve a very concept of future traveling itself. Okay, so cool. That was the story of Niam and Osin. And are you guys ready for the next story? This story is the story of the seven sleepers of Ephesus, and this story comes from the Christian lore. What's interesting about this story of the seven sleepers of Ephesus is that while it appears in the Christian lore, the story also appears in the Quran. It comes in the the Quran in the Surah 18th as the Kaf section, which is the section of the cave. It's about the people, the companions in the cave. And there are a couple of sites in Jordan and in Turkey that are considered sacred because the place in this story is believed to be the place that are the sacred places, and it's a very it's a sacred spot for both the religions, the Christianity and Islam. So this story, just a little bit of a context. The story is sets in a time where Christianity as a religion was seen as was actually a minority. So after Jesus Christ had the apostles had started spreading Christianity, there was a backlash where the Romans were trying to curb that religion. It was a religion of rebellion, and there was a time where Christianity was prosecuted. It's funny, right? Like right now, we can't see that way. Christianity is one of the most dominant religions, and goes so far that they have become more dominating and in some cases oppressing in some cultures and all. But at this time, Christianity was something that was a minority, and what was happening is that there were a lot of prosecutions and deaths following of anyone who followed this banned religion. So amidst all this, there were these seven believers who were trying to survive this during the reign of the Roman Emperor Decius. Okay, so Decius is the Roman king. This is around 250 AD. Okay, and there are these seven people. Now the names of the seven people are not important, but I'll just let you know because it will give you some context to the thing. So one of the person is called the Mexilin. There is Meslina, who's the another companion. There is Monesus. Okay. There is Sazenus, Tibernus, Cephatatus. Sorry, the names are very hard. And then there is this Yemliha. Okay, Yemliha. So these are the seven people who managed to escape the torture, and they finally find this random cave in the city, near the city of Ephesus, and they hid inside it. And along with them, there is a dog that just comes in called Kitmir. So that's a dog. Okay. And this dog, and they go inside the cave, and while praying to this one god, they finally fall asleep, and they go into a deep sleep. Now the emperor, who was very, very angry with the fact that these people were not renouncing the religion and their attitude towards the pagan religion, the Roman idols, was not improving. So he decides to shut them in the cave and just lock them in as an example for the other people. And the cave is finally sealed. Now, sometime later, one day, a landowner is looking for an area to put, to take his cattle pens, and he finds this cave, and he opens this, he opens the mouth, and he finds these seven people sleeping there. He goes near them, and looking at their bodies, he feels that they're dead, and he's about to take their belonging when Kitmi, the dog, wakes up and he starts barking. Until this landowner just runs out screaming. Now this is because of this commotion. The seven sleepers, they wake up, and they wake up very groaning and yawning. They think that they've only been asleep for a day, so they told Yemliha, one of the companions, to go out and get some food from the city of Ephesus. So, on arriving on the city, Yamliha looks around and he's very startled by the city. The city is completely changed. There's strange architecture. There are buildings which are very different. In fact, some of the buildings had the sign of the Christ, and that's weird because he's not able to understand what is happening. And he finally arrives at a bakery, and just in a very startled way, he takes a bread and he's about to pay the baker the coins. When the baker looks at the coins and says that these coins are not valid anymore. These coins belong to they come from the realm of the reign of Decius, and he's just startled by this particular man. Now Yamliha is not able to understand, and he starts having anxiety attacks. He's not sure what's happening. Where are the other Romans, and where exactly is he? What does he mean that this coin is not valid? And and this is where he starts spinning, and that's when a bishop comes out of what looks like a church and tries to soothe this frightened man. And he asks Yamliha, like, who are you? What happened? And Yamliha, ends up just telling him everything that, about the whole prosecution, about the fact that, his companions are in the cave, and he comes out and he's not able to understand where he is, and he doesn't remember Ephesus being like this. So the bishop tells him to take him to the cave, and Yamliha, treks back to the mountain, to the cave, and makes the bishop meet the companions. And all the companions, they corroborate the story. They tell them that, this is what had happened. And then the bishop, hearing on the story, realizes something. He tells him that Decius had passed away 2 centuries ago, and the cave had been closed ever since. The cave was something that they had always known as a dead spot. Christianity was something that had gone from being prosecuted to being a state religion. This time being in the reign of Theodosius II. And the world had finally accepted the one true God. Now the 7 companions eventually understood that they had basically slept through almost 200 years. While very excited about the new state of the world, but they were a little unsure about their place in it. I mean, who are they now? What do they do? Do they even belong to this world? So rejecting the offer of the bishop to come down to the city, they decide to go back to a deep slumber for eternity. So yeah, that was the story of the seven sleepers of Ephesus. Yeah, Chitra, that's actually the thing. It's almost like these guys were power sleepers and they just went into a coma. And it's interesting that so what's interesting also is the fact that while in the Christianity it's almost an accidental thing, in the Quran this is almost a way for the God to show you were believers, and we will show you a world that will that will come. So there is a little bit of a difference in theme when the stories go through different retellings. In some of them, also the bishop, ends up commemorates the day. So 7th of July is a day in Christianity where people go to these religious spots and they still believe it. In Islam, there is no particular date. This date keeps changing. So people go to this cave in the Jordan, and they ultimately go and look at the names. It's a holy spot, so people come and visit it for the belief and the fact that they lived through a time where they had to be prosecuted for the belief that was true, and then finally coming to a time where the belief was actually well accepted. So yeah, that was the other story, the second story from the Christian laws. Yeah, so any question, guys? Any question you want to ask, or any comments you have about this? Cool. So we can move to the third story. Many of these stories are new, or sometimes they just have a very different way of the different focus altogether. Today I'm telling the story from a time traveling point of view, but these stories are actually meant as a show of faith. So it's always interesting, these stories, but that's interesting that you guys are enjoying it too. So the last story, the thing, and it comes, we all have to circle back home comes from our Hindu mythology, and this is the story of Revati and Balram. So this story is about how Revati meets Balram. Now I'm pretty sure all of you know who Balram is. Balram is the elder brother of Sri Krishna. I'm pretty sure you also know that Sri Krishna was the avatar of Vishnu, so Balram was the avatar of Sheshnag. Okay, and that was something that these. While they have their own story, Balram is an important character in the story of Krishna and all. This story is about how Balram and Revati, his wife, they finally meet. Okay, so the story starts off with Kakudmi. Kakudmi is a king, okay, and he's a very benevolent king, and he has a daughter named Revati. Okay, and now like every other king in Indian mythology or in most of the stories, he knows that his daughter is the most beautiful one. He also knows that his daughter is so talented and she's of a marriageable age. So, like every patriarchal parent worries that he must get her married to he must get her married to someone who's worthy. But he doesn't feel anyone's worthy around his kingdom, in the world around him, and this starts making him this starts getting him a little worried. So he finally decides to go to Brahma. He is a big devotee of Brahma. So he decides to go to Brahma with Revati to ask for who should be a suitable suitor for his daughter. So he goes on this long tedious journey with his daughter Revati to Brahmlok. Now Brahmlok is the place where Brahma ends up staying. And when he reaches there, Brahma is in the middle of watching a performance by the Gandharvas who are dancing out some of the slokas from the Vedas, and not wanting to disturb the deities and the devtas and all. Kakudmi just quietly stands and waits for the performance to get over. When the performance finally gets over, Kakudmi, goes to Brahma and he says that, Brahma, please help me out. I don't think there's anyone worthy of my daughter in my kingdom or around the world. So can you let me know if you know anyone who's worthy and all? Now, on hearing this, Brahma starts laughing hysterically. He quickly tells, Kakudmi that in your journey, in the duration of your journey here, and while you waited, more than 27 Chaturyugas have passed on your time, because the time works differently in the Brahmlok as it worked on the Prithvi Lok. And 27 Chaturyugas, just to take a side note, is one Chaturyuga is the whole cycle of all the yugas. The 4 yugas. The yugas are Satyug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug, and Kal Yug. Okay, and that's one Chaturyuga. Okay, now, based on different calculations and my understanding of it, Chaturyuga ranges from 24,000 to almost 46,000 something and all. Okay, the point is it's a good amount of time. Okay, so imagine that's if there's 24,000, 24,000 into 27 times. Okay, and he says that anyone, everyone in your kingdom, anyone you knew, all your ministers, your family, everyone is dead by now. So you have nowhere to go back to. Now, hearing this, Kakudmi starts getting frightened. He is like, what do I do? I came here just to take help, but now I'm like without a kingdom, and who's going to marry my daughter? What is going to happen? So Brahma, just calms him down. He's like, look, I understand that that this has happened, but it seems like there could be someone there could be someone who's suitable for your daughter. I think you should go back to earth. This is a time where Vishnu has taken the avatar of Krishna and Sheshnag has taken the avatar of Balram, and I personally think, looking at your daughter, that Balram would be the most suitable suitor for your daughter. So on hearing this, Kakudmi gets very excited and he travels back. Ajitra, you're right. This is, I think in Earth, in Hindu mythology, it's always about multiverses. All the different loks, though multiverses may not be the right word, it's different planes of existence, So Patal Lok, Prithvi Lok, Bhulok and Swarglok are all different planes of existence. That's why the time runs differently. Okay. So finally, they, the father and daughter, they quickly go back to Earth. And when they go back to Earth, they finally find Balram on a field plowing at that point of time. And Kakudmi tells Balram about this situation. He tells him that Brahma had sent him, and he says, he was looking for his hand for the marriage of his daughter. So Balram is, ultimately, looks at this and he smiles, and he tells Kakudmi that he was waiting for her because this is what was meant to be. He knew this was going to happen. So yeah, you could say it's a parallel universe, but I think it's a better way to understand it is it's a plane of existence. So it's a different existence altogether. The time on Earth is different from the time that is being run. Parallel universe would mean that there are multiple Earths. This is not Earth. Earth and heaven are in a different existence altogether. So time and reality is very different. So yeah, just to talk about that. So what's so interesting is that now there's a difference in the physical demeanor of Revati and Balram. You see that in every yug, humans had a different form. So in Satyug, humans and most of the beings were supposed to be almost 21 to 30 feet. Okay, in Treta Yuga, they become 14 feet. They start diminishing. The stature starts going down because the divinity is moving away. So the human beings are almost 14 feet, and then in the Dwapar Yuga, humans are almost 7 feet, and then in the Kal Yuga, humans are almost just 1 feet, 1.5 feet. That's our height. So blame it on the gods. We are only like 1 feet. So given this discrepancy, because Revati belongs to Satyug, she's almost towering in front of, she's almost like 3 times the height of Balram. So this becomes a problem. Like how can this even work out, right? And that's when Balram takes out his hull, and he ultimately, now I would the story says he taps her, but I keep thinking that he hits her. He taps her on her head and he brings her down to her his height, and so Revati ends up becoming a part of the Dwapar Yuga of this age. Seeing this, Kakudmi is very happy, and he decides to go to Himalaya, to achieve moksha and to ultimately do the tapasya and to achieve moksha. And the marriage of Balram and Revati is celebrated with great celebration. And they have, the story goes on. They have kids, and after Balram, dies, Revati does a sati and she kills herself. But between that time, they have a good they have a good marriage, and this is a story of 2 different time zone beings coming together and having a union. So yeah, so this is the 3rd story. Any questions? So yeah, so what's interesting in all these stories is, look, I know this is time traveling, but Dad, you're right. Narad was Narad used to time travel a lot. In fact, Narad was something that he could move from planes of existence. But because Narad himself was not a human being, he was okay doing that. And to be honest, in one of the retellings, it's Narad who tells Balram and Krishna that this is going to happen. Now, in Hindu mythology, there's always a backstory. So, to be honest, Revati is itself a reincarnation of another princess who was supposed to marry, who wanted to marry Sheshnag, and said that, because I want to marry someone who can take the weight of the earth. And the only one who could take the weight of the earth is Sheshnag. So there are different this thing, and you're right, this is a happy story. So what's interesting about all these stories is that you have a very different reaction and this thing. So if you think about it, and this is what I want to talk about, the role of time itself in all these stories. Okay, so if you see the first story, right, the Niam and Osin story, the time itself acts as a punishment. Okay, time is something that needs to be stopped. So the land of eternal youth is sort of a gift that is given, and finally when he comes out of it, time catches up, almost like he had committed a sin by trying to move away, and the universe, the time tries to course correct. So this story talks about the role of time almost like a punishment and a sin concept, and it's all about where you are enduring reality itself. Okay, the second story, the story of the seven sleepers, there the time acts as a proof of a belief of something that you want to see, but you're not seeing it in your own time. So over the time, after 200 years, time itself acts as a proof that your belief was finally shown to you. If you believe that this is how the world should be, if you believe that this is the right, the true God, it was finally shown to you. And this is a story that talks about where ultimately it's a sign, but at the end of it, the seven sleepers, they do not know what to do with this do with this reality, so they end up rejecting this reality. And if you see the last story, the story of Revati and Balram, their time acts as a providence. Providence being like a God-gifted, it's a God-given, And if you think about it, the story while starts with Kakudmi coming and getting horrified at the fact that he had almost like that interstellar time where they're away in a different plane and the time and the earth has passed very quickly. But Brahma, when he says that Balram is the one, and given the backstories, it was almost something that was meant to happen. Balram was expecting Revati to come. So it was something of a providence, something as a solution. Because if Revati had not time traveled, she would have never met Balram. Or at least not Balram of that particular Chaturyog. And this story is about the accepting of reality. And that's what, I guess, that's the thing about time itself, right? Now, time, if you think about it, is reality. It's the moment that you're facing. The idea of wanting to time travel, the idea of wanting to move beyond the time, it's something that comes as a human desire, because something that we feel that we want to know, the anticipation of the future. We don't know what the future holds, so we want to see it. We like as human beings to know it, or the wanting to relive a particular past moment or change the particular past moment, is what the thing is. And what's interesting in all these mythologies is that what they're talking about is the pleasure and the perils of being completely tethered to time, or untethered to time. And if you think about our current situation, in this COVID situation, we many times, we've had discussions with many people, right, where we wonder the question that, what I wish we could just move ahead in time, I wish that we could just go ahead and see, what will happen, or I wish I could not live this moment right now. I just wish I could go back, go into future, or I wish I could go back in time and I could have done this, right? And what's interesting in that is that we all feel that, right? And I mean, this is something that is explored with science fiction a lot. And yes, Dad, you're right. Outlander is an amazing series that explores this, about a woman traveling back in time. And the question of, when you travel back in time, what do we want from time? Do we want the time to, to stay the same? Do we want to change time? And this desire to control, this idea, this need for humans to domesticate it, is something that speaks. So that speaks a lot about us as humans. So this relationship with time is actually a reflection of our reaction to our reality. If you always live in time where you are like, I wish I could change this in past, you're reacting to the reality that you're not liking it, and you keep thinking that going back in time will change it, or the idea of going into the future because you feel that the current moment is not as good, right? So I think what's important for us to consider is this idea that how do we see time? I mean, because remember, while the idea of moving through time may be exciting and it may have its own benefits from, as you saw in the stories, it also completely divorces you from what makes you. You are a product of your time, right? And I think that's very important. We make a question that, why did this situation have to happen to us, right? And I mean, the thing is, it had to happen. This was probably the way it was going to be. Now, again, whether you want to keep it as this was meant to happen, or whether this is a nihilistic situation where no one could have seen it. That's up to you. But the thing is, what are you going to do in this moment? And that was the stories from our mythologies about time travel. Yeah, Vicky, I think we all want to travel to the future, and I think that's the point, right? I mean, we want to travel, but imagine this happens to you. You sleep and you wake up 2-3 years later, and you realize that there's a bigger apocalypse that has happened. Climate change has completely destroyed the thing. You will suddenly wish that I could go back to the time that you were familiar with. The idea that when we want to travel through time, when we want to move ahead, we only think of that everything is going to move ahead with us. But the thing is, our reality is going to change. If you travel in the future, you may end up coming to a time where people you knew do not exist anymore. And the question is, who are you without the people around you? So if you want to travel to time, great, but just remember it has its own consequences. Yeah, so that was the three stories from the the mythologies. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll be coming up with more stories. So yeah, I guess if there's any questions, anyone has anything, let me know. Oh, by the way, there are many more stories. I just chose 3 stories because it was easier. The thing, I mean, Japanese have their own stories. What's interesting, what I personally find interesting in all these stories is this idea that if you think the scientific concept of time travel, the Einstein concept that if a person moves at speed of light, they'll come to the future, right? But they can't travel back in time, right? Our mythologies do the same thing. The idea of a person traveling in the future, time moving faster rate. And it's interesting that the human mind had already gone there way before science could give it a concept. So yeah, thank you everyone. I hope you all, as I said, enjoyed it. Let us know the thing. I will be taking more distinct stories and all. I think for now we can I think we can end it for now. If you have any questions about the stories, let me know. So yeah, this was Mathematical, and I was your chronologically confused mathematician, and I hope to see you guys soon. There'll be more stories coming up, and if any of you guys have a story to tell us, let us this thing. I'll be great to share the screen. I think we can we get people on? Okay, no, I don't think I can get people on. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this, and have a good day today. So I hope to see you guys soon, maybe in the future, maybe in the past. I'll be honest, I'm very fascinated by time travel, and despite all the stories and all the lessons that I've learned, I'm the first person who'll go back. I would love to ask you guys this question: which if you could travel in time, where would you want to go? What is your favorite place to travel to, or the time to travel to? Oh, that's a very easy question. I think I'll travel to the future for sure. To be honest, I think it's a little unfair, this thing, because I would definitely want to travel in the past. I think I definitely want to go back to the time of dinosaurs. That's for sure. I definitely want to check that out. But yeah, I want to go to the future. If you give me one choice, I will definitely go to the future. The idea of what we have accomplished, the where humans are, is much more fascinating. So yeah, that's always there. True, and I think as human minds, and I think that also differentiates us from other animals. If you think about it, unlike the floods or the disasters and all, where animals will react to the situation as like us, because if a flood comes in, an animal is going to run the same way as we are going to run. But time travel, the idea of moving into a time, just imagine a small dog, you just take him in put him in the future. A dog may not really realize the fact that he's in the future, right? And I think that just speaks about our cognitive development as human beings. So yeah, I guess that was it. That's good to know that that's interesting. Good to know people are liking future, but like past is something. I think the fact that we all want to move to past comes from this need that we want to rectify things, or we want to relive certain things. We want to reminisce a thing, and I don't know what can get more human than that, right? So yeah, I guess cool. We'll end the session here. If there's anything else, feel free to keep commenting on this thing. This live stream is going to be on this channel. We were also trying to see on different things. We had done an Instagram live, and now we are doing a Facebook live just to see what works out better. And we'll be back with more sessions and more stories. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you soon. Yeah. Thank you. See you, everyone.